I was at brunch last Sunday with a group of friends, and this guy walks in. Gucci belt, off-white sneakers, BMW keys sitting right there on the table. Not in his pocket, on the table, next to his mimosa. That little blue and white logo facing out like a centerpiece. About 30 minutes in, the check comes. $62 a person. Pretty normal for brunch in the city. And I watch this guy with the designer belt and the luxury car keys on full display, pull out his phone and start doing what I can only describe as financial gymnastics, checking his banking app, transferring between accounts, asking if someone can Venmo him and he'll pay them back next week. I'm sitting there thinking, you drove here in a car that costs you $650 a month, but you can't cover a $62 brunch tab without moving money around. And that's when it clicked for me. We don't have a poverty problem in this country. We have an epidemic of people who are completely, exhaustively dedicated to looking rich while being broke. Not a little broke, I'm talking negative net worth, one emergency away from catastrophe, cosplaying success while drowning in debt broke. I'm going to break this down for you today, not to judge other people, but so you can catch yourself before you fall into the same trap. I spent years on Wall Street, and the one thing I learned is that the people who look the richest in the room are often the ones with the least actually backing it up. Today, I'm going to show you exactly how to spot fake wealth, the 10 signs that separate people who are building real money from people who are just performing it. Let's start with something the luxury industry absolutely does not want you to understand. I call it the entry-level luxury trap. Here's how it works. Luxury brands, your Louis Vuittons, your Guccis, your BMWs and Mercedes, they make their real money from genuinely wealthy clients. We're talking people with $10 million net worths who buy a new S-Class every couple of years without blinking. But here's the problem. There aren't enough of those people to sustain the business. The math doesn't work if you only sell to actual millionaires. So what did these brands figure out decades ago? They created a second tier. Lower-priced items that still carry the prestigious logo, marketed specifically to people who want to signal wealth but can't actually afford the real luxury experience. This is why Louis Vuitton sells a $500 key pouch. This is why Gucci sells a $450 belt. This is why BMW makes a base 2 series starting at $38,000. Nobody talks about this, but these products aren't made for wealthy people. Wealthy people are not walking around with a $500 key pouch as their primary luxury flex. These products are engineered to extract money from people who are stretching to afford them. And here's what makes it so insidious. A 2023 study from Experian found that the average household income of someone financing an entry-level luxury vehicle, think BMW 2 Series, Mercedes CLA, Audi A3, is actually lower than the average household income of someone buying a fully loaded Honda Accord or Toyota Camry. Let me say that again because the math is wild. The people buying the cheap luxury cars are, on average, making less money than the people buying the expensive regular cars. The entry-level luxury buyer is more likely to be financially stretched, more likely to have a longer loan term, and more likely to be underwater on that vehicle within 2 years. The person in the Honda? More likely to own it outright, more likely to have a positive net worth, more likely to actually be building wealth. But who looks richer at the stoplight? The entry-level luxury trap is a psychological exploit designed by very smart marketing people to separate you from your money. Now let me walk you through the 10 signs. Sign 1. The logo to net worth ratio. Here's what I actually observed working with high net worth clients on Wall Street. Genuinely wealthy people, I'm talking 8 figures and up, are surprisingly understated in their everyday presentation. Sarah Stanley Fallaw, who wrote The Next Millionaire Next Door, found that the majority of millionaires in America don't drive luxury cars, don't wear designer clothes regularly, and couldn't care less about visible logos because they don't need external validation. Their bank account already knows they're wealthy. They don't need a stranger at Starbucks to confirm it. But you know who does need that external validation? People who are financially insecure. When your checking account doesn't make you feel successful, you go looking for that feeling somewhere else. You buy the logo not for yourself, but for the reaction you imagine getting from others. So watch for people whose visible logos are dramatically out of proportion with their likely income. Someone making $55,000 a year carrying a $2,800 Louis Vuitton Neverfull. Someone in an entry-level sales job wearing an $8,000 Rolex Submariner. The math doesn't work. If you make $55,000, you're taking home maybe $43,000 after taxes. Rent alone might run $18,000 to $24,000 depending on your city. That $2,800 bag is over 6% of your gross annual income. On a bag! I'm not saying people can't buy nice things. There's a difference between buying quality you can genuinely afford and stretching yourself thin for a logo that communicates a financial status you don't actually have. The first is personal preference. The second is a trap. Sign 2. Base model badge engineering. I see this constantly with young professionals trying to project success, and I'm going to be honest with you. It's one of the saddest financial decisions I watch people make. Here's how it works. Someone wants a BMW because BMW signals success, but they can't afford an actual nice BMW. So they go to the dealership and buy the absolute base model. Cloth seats, smallest engine, 0 upgraded features, and pay $42,000 for a driving experience that's genuinely worse than a $32,000 fully loaded Honda Accord. But from the outside, pulling up to the valet, it still has that hood emblem. Let me give you the real numbers. A base 2024 BMW 330i starts around $44,000. You get 255 horsepower and leatherette seats, which is just a fancy word for fake leather, by the way. A fully loaded 2024 Honda Accord Touring is about $39,000. You get 252 horsepower, actual leather seats, a bigger screen, more safety features, and better reliability ratings. The Honda is the better car by almost every objective measure, but it doesn't have the badge. So people will spend $5,000 more to get a worse car with the right logo. So here's the part that really kills me. The people who would be impressed by that BMW badge, they're the people who don't actually know anything about cars. Anyone who does know cars can spot a base model immediately. The leatherette, the smaller wheels, the missing features. It's obvious. So you're spending more money to impress people who don't know any better, while looking foolish to people who do. Sign 3. The visible-invisible wealth gap. This is where we really start to understand the psychology. Wealth comes in 2 forms, visible and invisible. Visible wealth is everything people can see. Your car, your clothes, your watch, the restaurant you're eating at, the vacation photos you post. Invisible wealth is everything else. Your retirement accounts, your emergency fund, your investment portfolio, your equity in real estate, your business assets. Here's what most people don't realize. Truly wealthy people have far more invisible wealth than visible. A typical millionaire next door might drive a 7-year-old car, but have $800,000 in index funds. They might wear clothes from Costco, but own 3 rental properties free and clear. The visible portion of their wealth is a tiny fraction of their actual net worth. Someone cosplaying success? That ratio is completely inverted. The $5,000 bag is visible. The $2,000 savings account is invisible and pathetically small. The least $50,000 car is visible, and actually a liability, not an asset. The retirement account with $4,700 in it is invisible. Here's how I look at it. If someone is driving a $60,000 car and wearing $8,000 in accessories, they're displaying $68,000 in visible wealth. For that to be financially healthy, they'd need conservatively $500,000 to $1 million in invisible assets backing it up. Now ask yourself, does their career, their age, their lifestyle suggest they have that? If they're 27 years old making $70,000 in a mid-level corporate job, I promise you, they do not have $750,000 in investments behind that lifestyle. The visible-invisible gap is a dead giveaway every single time. Sign 4. The lifestyle subscription trap. Traditional luxury was about ownership. You bought a nice watch, you owned it for 30 years, maybe passed it down to your kids. Wealth was durable. But modern fake wealth is increasingly subscription-based, and the people who designed these subscription models are absolute geniuses at extracting money from people performing success. Think about it. Leasing a luxury car instead of owning one. Renting designer items from services like Rent the Runway. Paying monthly fees for luxury lounge access. The fake rich person often doesn't own anything. They're renting an aesthetic. The math is simple. Watch this. Someone leases a Mercedes E-Class at $689 a month for 36 months. At the end of those 3 years, they've paid $24,804, and they own absolutely nothing. Zero equity. They hand back the keys and start over. Someone else buys a 3-year-old Honda Accord for $24,000, finances it at 5% for 48 months. Their payment is around $552 a month, lower monthly payment. And at the end of those 48 months, they own a car still worth $12,000 to $15,000. They built equity. Over 10 years, the person leasing luxury cars spends roughly $83,000 and always owns nothing. The person buying and keeping regular cars spends roughly $48,000 and always owns a vehicle worth something. That's a $35,000 difference, enough for a down payment on a house. All of it going to the performance of wealth rather than the building of it. The leasing person looks richer at any given moment. The buying person is richer at every given moment. Sign 5. The social media ratio. Nobody talks about this, but this one is everywhere, especially with younger people, and I want you to really pay attention here. When someone is genuinely wealthy and secure, they don't need to document every expensive experience. They're not photographing every nice meal, every vacation, every bottle of champagne. But someone cosplaying success? Every single luxury experience gets documented. Because the documentation is the point. The meal wasn't for the experience, it was for the Instagram story. The trip wasn't for the memory, it was for the content. There's research backing this up. A 2021 study from the Journal of Consumer Research found that people who frequently post about luxury purchases and experiences report lower financial well-being and lower life satisfaction than those who don't, even at similar income levels. The performance of wealth is negatively correlated with both actual wealth and happiness. You're getting the worst of all worlds. Watch for people whose social media is almost exclusively luxury experiences and luxury items. That's not abundance. That's anxiety wearing a designer outfit. Sign 6. Context-dependent flexing. A genuinely wealthy person presents consistently. They dress roughly the same way for brunch as for a business meeting as for a Saturday morning run. Their car is their car whether anyone is watching or not. But someone cosplaying success often maintains a separate public self and private self. They wear the designer outfit to the event, fast fashion at home. They bring out the luxury bag when they'll be seen, the Target bag to the grocery store. They drive the financed BMW to work, but borrow a friend's car for road trips because they're worried about the mileage on their lease. Here's what I actually did with my own money in my 20s. I stopped performing and started building. And the mental load that lifted when I wasn't maintaining two versions of myself was enormous. Because that inconsistency is exhausting. The stress of managing the gap between who you appear to be and who you actually are financially, it taxes everything. I knew someone back then who would literally change watches depending on where she was going. One nice watch, a gift from a relative, for work events and nice dinners. A $30 Amazon watch every other time. And I remember thinking, why? If you can only afford one nice watch, either wear it all the time or don't wear it at all. But the selective deployment of status symbols is a tell. They're not reflecting your financial reality. They're tools being strategically deployed to create an impression. Sign 7. The financial vocabulary gap. People who are genuinely building wealth talk about money differently than people who are performing wealth. Someone cosplaying success talks almost exclusively about spending, where they ate, what they bought, where they're going next, how much things cost. Their entire financial vocabulary is consumption-based. Someone actually building wealth? Their vocabulary includes investing, compounding, asset allocation, equity, appreciation, tax-advantaged accounts, diversification. They talk about money in terms of what it's doing, not just what it's buying. I'm going to be honest with you. This isn't about showing off financial knowledge. It's about what genuinely occupies your mind. If you're building wealth, you naturally think and talk about the mechanisms of wealth. You're curious about how money works. You read about it. You have real conversations about it. But if you're performing wealth, you're an expert on consumption. You know which designer is trending, which restaurants are hot, which neighborhoods are aspirational. Listen to how people around you talk about money. Are they talking about spending it or growing it? That answer tells you more about their actual financial situation than any logo ever could. Sign 8. The absence of boring wealth. Here's the part that changed everything for me when I was working with clients. Real wealth is boring. Genuinely wealthy people have boring things like properly funded emergency accounts, boring things like adequate life insurance, boring things like estate plans and living trusts, boring things like diversified investment portfolios they don't check every single day. This boring stuff is invisible, unsexy, and completely unpostable. Nobody is putting their Vanguard account statement on Instagram. Nobody is flexing their 6-month emergency fund. But this boring stuff is what actual financial security looks like. Someone cosplaying success typically has none of it. They have the luxury items but no emergency fund, the fancy car but no disability insurance, the designer wardrobe but zero retirement contributions. Ask someone who appears wealthy about their boring financial infrastructure. Do they have a will? Do they know what their 401k match is? Do they have anything in a brokerage account? 6 months of expenses liquid? If the answer is no across the board, but yes to designer bags and luxury vehicles, you're looking at a costume, not a fortune. A study from the Federal Reserve found that nearly 40% of Americans can't cover a $400 emergency expense without borrowing money or selling something. And I promise you, a significant portion of that 40% owns something with a luxury logo on it. The priorities are completely inverted. Sign 9. The fixed cost-to-income ratio disaster. This is where the rubber meets the road financially. Financial stability isn't just about how much you make. It's about how much of what you make is already committed before you even wake up in the morning. Your rent, your car payment, your insurance, your minimum debt payments, your subscriptions, your phone bill. This is your fixed cost floor. Money that's gone no matter what. Financially healthy people keep fixed costs below 50% of take-home pay, ideally closer to 40%. That leaves room for variable spending, saving, investing, and handling emergencies without panic. Someone cosplaying success? Their fixed costs are often 70, 80, even 90% of their income. Because each individual luxury commitment seemed manageable in isolation. The apartment was only $2,200. The car was only $650. The memberships and subscriptions are only $300. But it all stacks up until there's nothing left. Here's a real scenario. Someone making $75,000 a year takes home about $4,800 a month after taxes. Luxury apartment? $2,200. Luxury car lease? $650. Insurance, phone, subscriptions, minimum payments? $600. That's $3,450 gone before they buy a single meal, a single grocery item, a single Uber. They have $1,350 left for everything else. Food, entertainment, clothes, emergencies, travel, saving, investing, everything. That's about $45 a day for their entire life outside of fixed costs. So what happens when the car needs an $800 repair? What happens when they get sick and miss a week of work? The answer is always more debt. The lifestyle is a house of cards. Sign 10. And I saved this one for last because it's the most revealing of all. I call it money stress inversion. Logically, you'd expect someone displaying a lot of wealth to be relaxed about money. If you can afford a $5,000 bag, surely you're not stressed about a $50 dinner tab. If you drive a $60,000 car, surely a $200 electric bill isn't causing anxiety. But with people cosplaying success, the opposite is true. They display luxury and stress about basics. They'll suggest splitting the check differently. They'll be mysteriously in the bathroom when the bill arrives. They'll have elaborate systems for avoiding costs while maintaining expensive aesthetics. Because every dollar went to the performance, leaving nothing for the mundane reality of life. So they're simultaneously displaying wealth and experiencing financial stress, which is the exact opposite of what actual wealth provides. Actual wealth provides options, flexibility, peace of mind. It means not thinking about the $50 or the $200 because it genuinely doesn't matter. If someone is wearing a Rolex but stressed about an unexpected $300 expense, that Rolex isn't a sign of wealth. It's the reason they have no wealth. Now, I want to be clear about something before we wrap up, because I can already hear the objection. Isn't this just judging how other people spend their money? Here's why I'm really making this video. I'm not talking about other people. I'm talking about you. I'm talking about the version of you that feels pressure to signal success before you've actually achieved it. I'm talking about the social media that bombards you with curated wealth. The coworkers showing up with nicer things. The family asking why you don't have a house yet. Society equating visible luxury with worth. So of course you feel pulled to play the game. But the game is rigged. The entry-level luxury trap, the logo to net worth ratio, the visible-invisible wealth gap. These aren't accidents. They are designed to extract maximum money from people who can least afford it. Transferring wealth from the aspiring middle class to corporations that profit from your insecurity. Every dollar you spend performing wealth is a dollar not building wealth. Every month of that luxury car lease is a month you're not contributing to investments. Every designer item financed at 23% interest is compound interest working against you instead of for you. And here's the part that really gets me. The performance doesn't even work. People who are actually wealthy aren't impressed by entry-level luxury logos. They see right through it. And everyone else, the regular people you're actually trying to impress, are too busy thinking about their own lives to care about your bag. So what do you actually do instead? First, redefine wealth correctly. Wealth is not what you display. It's assets minus liabilities. It's net worth, not gross lifestyle. It's options and freedom, not logos and leases. Real wealth is invisible, boring, and incredibly powerful. Fake wealth is visible, exciting, and ultimately worthless. Second, track your visible to invisible ratio. Look at your actual spending over the past year. How much went to visible things you could show off versus invisible things that build your financial foundation? If the ratio is wrong, start shifting it. Build the emergency fund before you build the wardrobe. For every dollar on something visible, put 2 towards something invisible. Third, specifically resist the entry-level luxury trap. Before you buy the cheapest thing from an expensive brand, ask yourself honestly, would I buy this if it didn't have this logo? If a base BMW isn't actually a good car for the money, why would you buy it? If a $500 designer keychain serves no purpose beyond the logo, why would you buy it? You're paying a premium for the performance of wealth. Buy the actually superior product and invest the difference in something that will make you genuinely wealthy. Link in the description if you want to run your own numbers on what that difference compounds to over time. I have an early retirement calculator there that will open your eyes. Fourth, and this is the hardest one, work on your internal sense of worth. The reason people perform wealth is because they've tied their self-worth to perceived financial status. They don't feel valuable unless others think they're successful. I'm going to be honest with you. No amount of designer items will fix that. You'll buy the bag and still feel inadequate. Then the shoes, then the watch, then the car, and you'll still feel inadequate because the hole isn't in your closet, it's in your self-concept. Work on that directly. Build something real. Develop genuine skills. Invest in relationships that don't require a performance to maintain. Here's the bottom line. There's a difference between enjoying nice things within your means and destroying your financial future for the performance of a lifestyle you can't actually afford. There's a difference between buying quality you genuinely value and buying logos that signal a status you're pretending to have. There's a difference between wealth and the appearance of wealth, and only one of those will actually make your life better. The 10 signs I walked you through today, the logo to net worth ratio, base model badge engineering, the visible-invisible wealth gap, the lifestyle subscription trap, the social media ratio, context-dependent flexing, the financial vocabulary gap, the absence of boring wealth, the fixed cost income ratio disaster, and money stress inversion. These aren't just ways to spot fake wealth in others. They're warning signs to check yourself against. If you recognized yourself in any of these patterns, that is not a failure. That is awareness. And awareness is where everything changes. You don't need to look rich. You need to actually be rich. And the path to actually being rich requires letting go of looking rich along the way. Build the boring wealth. Fund the invisible accounts. Drive the unsexy car. Let other people wonder about your finances. The truly wealthy don't care what strangers think about their money. And neither should you.